going to be taking a look at Panasonic's new GX8. Now I have to tell you, when this first came out of the box, I was very surprised at how large it was. It's much larger than the GX7. I don't know if you can see quite how much larger it is, but it's a much thicker, wider, and taller body. Now I do have a larger lens on the GX8 than the GX7, but nonetheless, it is a much larger and heavier body by a fairly good amount. The GX8 comes in at 487 grams, while the GX7 comes in at 402 grams. So it's a bit heavier. And like I said, I was surprised. Now, I did come to like this camera. The major difference is the grip. If you see, the GX7 has just a little bit of a grip, and the GX8 has quite a bit more. This is pretty consistent with the new G7 by Panasonic, which has an even larger grip, as you can see. Now, the GX8 is heavier than the G7, but the GX8 has a couple of very interesting features that set it apart. It has a slightly larger sensor. It has a 20.3 megapixel sensor. Not a big deal. The improvement's minor, but it is an improvement. Now, the GX8 has 4K video, which it shares with the G7, and 24 and 30 frames per second video. It also shoots 4K stills. These are interesting if you're not intending to print large size frames. 4K video stills, or 4K stills, are lower resolution than you would normally want for a high quality image. That said, if you want to capture, for example, sports photography, or your child in the middle of a jump or something like that, it might be a really good way to capture that and be able to print it out on a web page. 4K for computer use is perfect. 4K is ultra high definition, and it will do just fine in any kind of video. You'll be very happy with that for video. Now, I want to caution you, when you shoot with 4K for stills, you want to make sure that you don't treat it like a video and use a slow shutter speed. You want to use a much higher shutter speed. In a video, you want a slow shutter speed to blur the images so they blend together well. Not true with a still image, so you want to use a higher shutter speed. So take that into consideration when you do use 4K stills, when you want to take 4K stills. Now, the biggest feature, as far as I'm concerned, about the GX8 is another feature it shares with GX7 is the in-camera image stabilization, or in-body image stabilization, as most manufacturers call it. But it is very, very useful if you need to take a photograph with a slow shutter speed and you want it to be clear. It will really reduce your vibration and your movement. So this is very handy. This camera also shares a video type features with its focus peaking and zebra. So that'll point out your point of focus, and the zebra will show you've got an overexposed area that's real bad. This camera claims an ISO of 25.6. Now I shot with it and I used up to 6400, and by 6400 ISO, it was losing a lot of saturation. So I would not shoot above 6400 personally. You may want to shoot higher, that'd be fine. This also has a very high quality magnesium alloy frame. Now that is significant. That means it should be much more durable. The G7 is a polycarbonate. The GX7 was kind of a combination. It was also a bit more durable. The AF is claimed to go to -4 EV. Now that's pretty good. They say it's effective at -4 EV. That's focusing in pretty low light levels. So that's a nice thing. Now, I used this camera for about 2 weeks. I took a trip to Branson. I used it to shoot a couple of shows. I'll show you a couple of pictures right now of some of the photographs I took during the shows. Now these were at relatively high ISO, 1600 ISO, and I may have taken, yes, I took one at 6400 ISO, and I'll show you that too. This was in an arena that was very dark for the animals, and I used 6400 ISO, And the results, although not stellar, were certainly respectable. You would find it very difficult to do any better without a quality camera. Now, on my trip, I also used the Panasonic LUMIX LX100. This was a good companion lens. I used the LX100 for its lens. It has a very fast normal lens, normal zoom lens. So it was very complementary, and I would normally put the 30 to 100 or 100 to 300 telephoto lenses on the GX8, and they were very complementary. I won't tell you that I don't have some reservations about the GX8. It's a fabulous camera. I don't have any reservations about that. I like the way it works. I like the way it handles. I like the features that it has. I like pretty much everything about it except for the price. It is a lot of money for a Micro Four Thirds camera. Let me tell you what I'm comparing and why I say what I say. I don't want to just leave that out there. The GX8 right now is coming in at $1197 for body only. The G7, which has virtually all of the features, except for a very significant feature, in-body image stabilization, the G7 comes in at $797 with the kit lens. Now, and I don't have the kit lens on it, by the way. I've got an adapter here for a Nikon 50mm. The G7 is significantly cheaper. Now, it also does not have the magnesium alloy body. It is a polycarbonate. So for those of you who are rough on your cameras or tend to more professional use, the polycarbonate may not be as attractive to you as the magnesium alloy. That said, there's a significant price difference, and like I say, that includes the lens with the G7. It comes pretty much with the lens in most of the kits so far, and it's a very good buy. It's very, very attractively priced. The GX8, if you need in-camera image stabilization, is the way to go. Sony now has image stabilization on the A7 Mark II, the A7R Mark II, and the coming out A7S Mark II. But they're significantly more expensive. So if you want a reasonably priced image stabilized body, the GX8 is a very way to go. Even if you throw out the difference in price, which is significant between the A7 Mark II and the GX8, the other factor that you need to consider is the size of the lens. The Sony lenses are much larger than the Panasonic LUMIX lenses. So when you put together a package, and I'm going to show you what I carried around on my trip, this little camera bag held my camera with a 14 to 45 zoom, my 7 to 14 zoom, and my 45 to 200, or the 100 to 300, and I actually had a little space in here for my little bitty 100 to 300, this little lens, itty bitty thing for a 30 to 100 lens. Very nice, very compact. So this was a nice, very portable kit to carry around, and I flip this around from a backpack to a front pack when I'm actually using it, and it's very convenient to open it up, get my lens out, make a lens change, put it back in again. As you can see, this is a very compact package. Now quickly I'll compare that to, this is the package I carry my Sony image stabilized A7 Mark II with, and you can see it's considerably larger and considerably heavier. The camera, of course, is on the table here. So now let's briefly talk about, again, I said I had some reservations about the GX8. Now these are all price-based reservations, to be candid with you. The GX8 $1197 competes with the XT10 and the XT1, which are APS-C. Now, neither of these has in-body image stabilization. Many of the lenses are image stabilized for the Fuji, but not all of them. Image stabilization is an advantage to the GX8. However, the quality of lenses that the Fuji has on an APS-C sensor, I think, make it a very strong consideration when you're talking about a price of only $100 more for the XT1 at the moment, And the XT10 at $699 also has a very durable frame and very competitive imagery. If you need image stabilization, you can use the lenses. The lenses are very high quality on Fuji. I think one of the things that keeps me using Fuji is the quality of the lenses. Now, I do wish they'd go to image stabilization in body. I think that would make my decision much simpler. Their lenses are relatively compact. They're not as small as the LUMIX GX8. They're just simply not. But they are compact and they're very high quality. Given the price similarities or the price differences, the APS-C sensor is a good competitor for the GX8 if you don't need video. Now, video, this is a hands-down winner. If you're doing stills and video, the LUMIX is a hands-down winner. It's much better. The Fuji simply does not compete on par with the GX8 on video. So that's a caveat. So I would consider the Fujis very strongly. I like the Fujis. I always have, and I've used them for many, many years. Back in the old G45 folder days, I used a Fuji, loved it, medium format. The other one I would like to throw in here for your consideration is the kind of long in the tooth A6000. Hopefully we'll see a replacement for it before long. It does not have in-body image stabilization. The rumor is that A7000 may have it. The A6000 is quite a bit smaller than the GX8. Here again we have the APS-C sensor. The kit lens that comes with the Sony is a 16-50, and it's very, very small, and it is of questionable quality. It's okay. After it goes through Lightroom, it comes out pretty nicely, but it has some shortcomings. So as you can see, this is a very compact lens, and you've got APS-C versus Micro Four Thirds. The APS-C is much smaller, much less expensive. We're talking about now $548 for the bodies and $699 with a lens, and that's pretty competitive considering you're getting APS-C versus the Micro Four Thirds, getting a pretty good deal in comparison. Like to see in-body image stabilization, which the GX8 clearly wins out on. The video on the Panasonic, I would say, is probably stronger, but the A6000 does do decent video, so it is not it's not a loser in the video compartment. So, by the way, I do not use this 16-50 lens. I do not like it. It's a kit lens in the negative sense of the word, and Sony does have a very, very high quality. This is a Zeiss 16-70. It is much larger, as you can see, and it's very high quality. I'm very happy. This is an f4 all the way through, and I found it to be a very good lens, very, very good lens. So that's equivalent of 24-105 in full frame. So it's an excellent lens, and that makes this a very worthy competitor. Although by the time you throw in that Zeiss lens, then the prices become very similar. So then in-body image stabilization becomes an issue. Now, lastly is the Sony A7 Mark II. Now, I'm saying the A7 Mark II because it has in-body image stabilization, which makes it a direct competitor, although Micro Four Thirds versus full frame, and you pay, of course, for the difference. But then the similarities go on and on and on. They're very, very similar in a lot of ways. The difference in price is the biggest separator between the two of these, and for traveling, the A7 Mark II is considerably heavier and larger, so that's probably a big consideration for some people too. I don't find it obtrusive. It's still a lot lighter than my DSLRs ever were, so I still find it quite an advantage over the DSLRs and the image quality to be superior on the A7 Mark II, especially with the in-body image stabilization. I've got some extraordinary shots with it because of the in-body image stabilization in very low light. The other consideration that I want you to think about is the A7, the original A7. Now it's still available for about $1098, which is a little bit less than the GX8. It's 416 grams as compared to the GX8 at 487 grams, so it's lighter and it's very similar in size. That's a comparison. Here again, full frame lenses. They're going to be bigger, they're going to be heavier. The lenses for the Panasonic are excellent, and they are quite a bit smaller. Quickly, I'm going to address my opinions on the Olympus versus Panasonic lenses. I happen to like the Panasonic lenses in general better. Number one, they're image stabilized, which works in harmony with the new image stabilization on the GX8. Both of them work combined. A lot of my lenses, unfortunately, they will not adapt to the very early Panasonic lenses, the 14 to 45, the 45 to 200, and I believe it's the 100 to 300 will not benefit from the combination of image stabilization from the lenses and the body. That said, you still got the in-body image stabilization, they just won't work in concert, so that's a consideration. But a lot of the newer lenses will work in concert, so you should get a higher degree of image stabilization. But the Olympus lenses are much smaller. And I think, and this is my opinion only, I think that because they're smaller, you tend to get less clear image in the corners. This has been mentioned in a few reviews, and I think it just makes sense that if you have a smaller lens, a smaller image circle, that's going to cause some issues around the periphery of the image. So I tend to stick with the Panasonic lenses for the most part. Now I do have some of the Olympus lenses, especially their 45 and their 25, but I do tend to be with the 14 to 45 zoom for the most part. It's one of their early lenses, and I think it's one of their best lenses, and I like it very much so. I use it most of the time when I'm in that range. 7 to 14 is my zoom, 14 to 45, 45 to 200. I also frequently throw in the 30 to 100 and the 100 to 300. They're good too. I have used some 14 to 42s. They've got 2 or 3 of them. They're okay, but why would I want to use them if I got the 14 to 45 and it's a better lens? There you have it. Do I like this camera? Yes, I do. I like all the features about it. I don't have any reservations about any features about it. It is compact enough. It has got a very good handle. It feels very good in the hand. Much like the G7, the additional bulk and weight are worth it, in my opinion, to make it fit in your hand better. It still fits in my bag. It's a little more of a squeeze than the GX7 was, but it still fits. And the lenses, of course, still fit, and they're small, so it's a very compact package. Is it the best for every circumstance? No. If I was just shooting stills all the time, I think I would consider the Fujifilm a very worthy competitor. I wish that Fuji would go with in-body image stabilization, and when they do, it'll be a no-brainer. But until they do, the Micro Four Thirds Lumix is still a worthy competitor because of that image stabilization. If you have the money to go to the full frame Sony, I think it's a winner. I'm hard pressed to say that's not the best choice of the group, but it is larger, a lot larger, and a lot heavier. Not as heavy or large as a DSLR, but it is a lot larger and heavier. And we're talking about a lot more money when you get a collection of lenses. The lenses are much pricier than what is available on the Lumix. Now the Lumix, you can spend a lot of money on lens if you wish to go to their very, very best, fastest lenses. But the Sonys have a limited selection of lenses, and you're going to spend a lot of money to get decent lenses. So if you want a nice, compact, reasonable to carry, reasonably priced camera, the GX8 is a good consideration. Is it the best value? No. No, I think it's a little bit overpriced right now to call it a best value. It is a good value, not a best value. Best value, in my opinion, is if you can still find a GX7. It has nearly all the features, with the exception of the 4K stills and the 4K video. If you're not shooting video, it's a very good option. If you can find one new, that's still a very good choice, and I've seen them so cheap. I think I've seen them $500–600. Makes it a very good option for the GX8. So there you have it. That's what I think. GX8's a good camera, not a particularly stunning value. But it is a good camera, and I certainly wouldn't say anything bad about it. I think you'd be happy with it.